Imagine for a second, what if encountering the infinite wasn't some earth-shattering moment of revelation, but, well, just a paperwork problem? What if the literal only thing standing between a fragile human mind and the terrifying, completely uncontainable vastness of the universe was just a gray desk, a broken stapler, and a deeply, deeply bored clerk? Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into a truly brilliant narrative construct called Standard Operating Procedures for the Ineffable. We're going to unpack this absolutely fascinating world where the Department of Paradox has a very specific job, literally filing away mystical events. It is such a clever look at how we as humans process overwhelming things. I am so excited to walk you through exactly how this intricate, bizarre bureaucracy of the divine actually functions. Section 1. Bureaucracy of the Ineffable. Taming the infinite with dry paperwork. So our anchor in this universe is a processing clerk named Josepha Vantage. And get this, she has already handled over 1,400 encounters with the absolute before breakfast, and she is entirely unfazed by it. Her whole job is to process what they call ineffable events. We're talking about things like a mathematician suddenly glimpsing the ultimate shape of a proof, or, a dog experiencing total wordless agreement with the ocean. These are moments that are just way too large for ordinary language. The source text gives us this incredible analogy. It says the ineffable is like a burning flame that wants to be everything, everywhere, all at once. And the paperwork acts as tongs. It allows clerks like Josepha to gently grab the absolute and set it down in a safe little box where it can't burn anyone's life down. Just think about how wild this survival mechanism actually is. On one hand, you have raw, terrifying, completely ego-destroying total cosmic unity, right? But the bureaucracy steps in and aggressively reduces all of that overwhelming enormity into a simple, mundane little checkbox, grade 2, devotional/involuntary. That's the trick. The department survives the mystical by stripping it of its sheer size and forcing it into a standardized form. Section 2. The Zeroth File anomaly. When the system becomes the event. Okay, so here is where things go off the rails. This anomaly triggers a massive inciting incident. After 11 years of perfectly boring routine, Josepha receives a terrifying, untabbed folder. And what's inside? A perfect description of her exact desk, her broken stapler, and her flickering fluorescent light. Someone, somewhere out there, is experiencing total cosmic unity, not with God, but with her filing system. It sets off a chain reaction the department calls the long recursion. You see, centuries ago, the very first founder nearly dissolved into the infinite, but they saved themselves by inventing paperwork, by building a box to put it in. Fast forward to 11 years ago, and the same recursive folder showed up on an undersecretary's desk and was just buried. But today the loop is closing right on Josepha. If she doesn't figure out how to process an event that is literally about processing the event, the entire bureaucracy is going to dissolve into undifferentiated light. No pressure, right? Section 3. Solving the infinite loop. Form Z and the circle. So down in the unmapped archives, Josepha consults archivist Evgenia Sorn, who drops this incredibly profound revelation. Smallness is the one thing infinity doesn't know how to be. The first founders, they didn't try to fight the infinite. They just gave it a small, structured place to stand. When you think about it, the entire department is just a massive, sprawling coping mechanism. To survive this crisis, Josepha realizes she needs to build a brand new form, one that can actually hold the infinite loop of the department itself. And the architectural difference between how they normally do things and her new solution is brilliant. Standard form P infinity, the one they always use, is completely linear. It's designed to push infinity away and describe it from a nice, safe distance. But Josepha's new creation, form Z, is circular. It's an infinite regress filed on purpose. The final field on the page simply points right back to the first field. By closing the form into a loop, kind of like a ring, it safely holds the paradox without ever actually needing to finish. Josepha files form Z, and boom, the department is saved. Section 4. The Bureau of Missing Adjectives. The moral cost of survivability. Saving the department ends up creating a brand new division, and their very first case is completely bizarre. There is a village called Vranik that has been mysteriously drained of its adjectives. Seriously. A grieving widow there can only say the word grief. She is entirely unable to describe the husband she actually lost. So to figure out where all these words are going, the team discovers this forgotten wing of the department. And it was built around a single remarkably kind idea: to keep orphaned words warm until they are needed again. But it turns out a rogue archivist named Iron Call is intentionally causing this adjective drought. And her reasoning, her doctrine, is deeply rooted in personal pain. You see, Iron lost her husband of 41 years, and the department ruthlessly processed her immense world-ending grief in just 11 days. That experience made her realize something. Making the absolute survivable is actually a theft of human experience. The department has spent 300 years hoarding stolen enormity, essentially making the world tame. So by stealing adjectives from villages, she's quietly gathering enough power to break open the first form and force the world to finally feel its own overwhelming size again. Now, to put that into perspective, we are talking about 400,000 cases a day. That is the staggering scale of the department's operations. If Oren Call actually succeeds in tearing the system open, she isn't just returning one widow's grief. No, she is returning 3 centuries of unprocessed enormity, 400,000 events per day, back into the world all at once. It goes without saying, the human mind simply couldn't survive that kind of flood. Section 5. The right of return, balancing safety with truth. Down in the deep stacks, Hosea finally confronts Iron Cal, who is literally seconds away from breaking the whole system wide open. Hosea realizes that Iron has already accepted the risk to her own life, so instead of fighting her, she makes her an incredible promise. She tells her that a box doesn't actually have to be a cage. It can simply hold things safely until a person is actually ready to feel them. She promises to rewrite the entire bureaucratic code to include a right of return. The enormity won't be permanently stolen for the sake of efficiency anymore. Instead, it will be held in trust and given back the very moment the person asks for it. Hearing this, Iron Cal agrees, and she returns the stolen words. There is a catch, though. An open-ended right of return would create a complete actuarial catastrophe. If even 5% of cases are reopened, the whole department would collapse under the weight. Enter junior clerk Fenn, who swoops in and designs the discretionary right of return. It's a targeted system. First, they identify cases where the person never actually healed. Then, they selectively reopen those specific files. And finally, they allow that individual to experience the truth at full size, but in a way that doesn't completely overwhelm the daily operations of the bureaucracy. And that brings us to the ultimate resolution. Case 001. Successfully restored. The widow in Vranik gets her words and her full, devastating grief back. She cries for 4 hours straight, but she reports that for the first time in weeks, she actually feels like the size of a person, rather than the size of a form. And instead of stamping the file processed like they used to, Category Z stamps it with a brand new word: held. Which brings us to the core existential question of this entire explainer. Look, we all build boxes to survive the overwhelming moments of our lives, right? We shrink our grief, our joy, our awe, just so we can function on a random Tuesday. But think about it. If your life's greatest enormity was safely filed away, would you invoke the right of return to feel it at its true size again? Take a moment to think about what you might have locked away in your own archives. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.